Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Andrew McNulty, who is the co-founder of TouchStay, a software service that enables hosts and managers in the short-term rental industry to create digital guidebooks for their guests. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
So, Andrew, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But try to keep your answers to 1 word or 1 sentence only, okay?
That's a challenge, but I'll try.
All right. So the first one, how long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
5 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Probably running drunk over a Porsche.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
I like my sleep. 8.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
Being personal.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Bath.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey.
The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition.
I pass.
Okay. When did you last cry and why?
I cry frequently. When my cat died recently.
Mm-hmm. The biggest mistake of your career?
Doing things too fast.
How do you relax?
I'm laughing because I don't relax that much. With family.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1 maximum.
A habit of yours that you hate?
Indecision.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life?
Patience.
Your favorite Netflix show?
Well, we're watching Schitt's Creek at the moment.
Okay, so that was the end of the rapid fire round, and you scored 9 on 10 because you passed 1 question. So you only win a car. Just kidding. You don't win anything. Welcome to marketing. But yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the bigger questions. The first one is, from being a CFO at Gucci to starting your own company, what challenges did you face in your corporate life? And tell us about this journey.
Wow, that's not a question I get asked that often. So thank you for asking it. Gucci was an absolute ball, as was my entire life in fashion. Not because I'm a fashionista. In fact, if people could see the video at the moment, they'd realize pretty quickly that I am not a fashionista. However, the people are fantastic and they're amazing. And that's what's kept me there as long as, or had kept me there as long as it did. Together with the fact that I was really ambitious and still am. So there was always a lot of progression. But because I wasn't a product person, a fashion person, it was never going to be something that fulfilled me. And I had always wanted to found my own business and start my own business, mainly because I don't generally like being told what to do. So I will listen and I'll take on board people's feedback and then ultimately make up my own mind. But I found that in corporate life, that was incredibly hard to maintain because you could see where you would do things differently. And that's ultimately what eventually pushed me to going to start my own business. Was that, where was I? I was like mid-30s at that point. And there's a point in your life where those kind of bigger decisions about going on to do what you really want to do have to happen. And mid-30s was a good moment. I'd reached a nice position in Gucci and in fashion generally, and I could take all of the skills that I'd learned, and that's not to be underestimated. The skills that I picked up there were huge for me now. And so I jumped ship and started my own business.
Okay, but since we're at the topic, what do you think of the upcoming House of Gucci movie? You must have heard of it with Lady Gaga and Jared Leto. And
yeah, I think everything that Gucci has done over the years has been to always try to find that different angle and to tap the moment of the time, and that is something that very few brands manage to do successfully. And I think that the example you gave there is just one of many where they kind of cotton on pretty quickly to where things are going and the shape of things. And I think it's brilliant. All the sort of things they do, and I think that's what you have to do in fashion. You have to, especially if you want to have mass appeal. Like there's fashion for true fashionistas, which is, very exclusive, very high end, very one-off pieces, and then you hit that point where you reach a certain audience, and you have to decide whether you stay true to that core, or whether you want to try and bring in some mass market to it. And Gucci have been really successful at doing that through the range of product they have and the merchandising they have to be able to bring in those accessible products. But in order to do that, you really need to shift away from marketing purely as this kind of exclusive, kind of almost untouchable, unattainable thing to something that is more democratic. And I think they do that really well.
So how did the idea of Touch Stay first come up? Like when and where did you see the need for starting such a software service?
Well, I've always traveled, as most people have, but I have always traveled and stayed in independent accommodation. So not your big brand hotels. Like my parents took me to places that you just kind of turned up and you rented this home for a week, and it didn't have the resort amenities that a hotel has, etc. But it was really an interesting form of accommodation to stay in. But I found as I started to stay in those places myself and take my kids to those sort of places, that the quirkiness, which was a real positive for those kind of businesses, was often matched in a way that you wouldn't necessarily think of, which was that the owners behind the scenes often had a little quirkiness, some personality, some things to say. And when you tapped into that, as I frequently did, because I was a pain in the ass and I would ask lots of questions all the time, it'd be like, well, this is great, but where do I take my kids for ice cream? Or what's the best pizza place to go to? Or just really annoying stuff like, you said that there would be towels in the bathroom. I don't see any. Where are they? Those kind of things. And the more and more I asked those questions, the more and more I realized that the person I was staying with had the answer instantly. And I thought, why are they spending all this time answering my questions? And my questions must be just like all the other questions that come from guests. You know what it's like if you've gone and stayed in an Airbnb or something, you never truly know exactly what your experience is going to be like or what you're going to get. And so inevitably there are unanswered questions, or if you're like me, you ask them. And there are always answers. And we thought, well, let's take that into a digital product so that the guest knows after they've booked that they have everything on their device that they could possibly want to know. Not only is that good for the guest, but it's fantastic for the busy host. Why would you answer the same question over and over and over again when you have this effectively knowledge-based digital repository of all the answers, which you can give to your guests before they even leave home? So that was the genesis of it. And it's become, so much more than just that. There's so many more potential things that you can do once you have something in digital form and you reach a consumer, there's lots of things you can do with it. But that was the birth of the idea.
And where do you think, because after the pandemic and during the pandemic, I suppose the Airbnb industry or this independent homes rental industry took a little bit of a beating, I suppose. What do you think the future of the industry is in general?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that the beating that these kind of places took was really very, very short-lived. if you were fortunate enough to be in a market where there was a lot of domestic travel. So the UK, where I'm from, but also, virtually the majority of the US, with the exception of, probably Hawaii, regions which you had to fly to. Domestic travel in Australia, for example, New Zealand. But as soon as you go to sort of Thailand, Indonesia, Caribbean islands, all those places you have to fly to, they took a beating for a lot longer. But for those that had domestic travel, we all wanted to go away. And as soon as our economies allowed us, or our governments allowed us to do so, we went. We just didn't get on a plane to do so. And I think one of the wonderful things that's come out of that is that we've all, don't get me wrong, I think we'd all still love to jump on a plane and fly somewhere off and be completely away from stuff. But I think we've also realized that, this thing about travel, this emotional part of travel, which is to escape, can be easily achieved domestically. There's some wonderful places here in the UK that we've gone to and experienced that are on our doorstep. And you're like, why do I have to fly to Florida or something, to feel like I can get away? You could do that domestically. So this fueling of demand and this discovery that we've all been able to find because of the pandemic is one of the really positive aspects I would take away. And I think that's one of the things that this industry, particularly short-term rentals, will really, really benefit from, is the number of extra eyes that are on this form of accommodation that probably weren't there before. Airbnb did a great job of growing the awareness of this kind of accommodation. But the pandemic that hit and the forcing of people to try and find things on their doorstep meant that there was a huge demand for stuff on the doorstep that hotels couldn't fill, that other forms of accommodation couldn't fill. And if you had the money that you saved from taking your family of 4 off to the States from the UK, and maybe you saved £2,000-3,000 in the airfare, some of that's going back into investing in really nice places to stay in the UK, so you can kind of up your level of stay experience. And I think that's one of the things that's really been beneficial to come out of it. And I think that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier in one of the questions, was you asked about excuse me, a future trend in marketing, and I think I replied being personal. And I think that is what we all crave now. It's not just a place to stay, but a place to stay that has a certain difference about it. And often that's around the experience you have when you're there, the interactions you have with the people that you're there, the interactions you have with the hosts. It's the interactions the experiences you have in the community, the places you see, the places you go to, on a much deeper level, because we all appreciate it so much more. And I think if we can tap into, and this industry is brilliantly poised for that, to be able to tap into this great asset that they have, which is a very personable form of accommodation and host behind it, and this desire of the traveler to want to go and connect with something a bit more interesting than a hotel.
I think the point you make about quirkiness and personalization, or making it personal, is something that also I think Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy, he made the point that either you can have an experience where you go to a hotel and they give you a chip and you just check in and everything, or on the other hand, that's sellable, but on the other hand, there's the other experience where they give you this ancient key with which you open your door in this ancient way, or like, it's something unique about the place that you won't find anywhere else, and it's not following a pattern. So I completely associate with your point. And I also feel that there's going to be after the pandemic, a travel 2.0, where we get to really redefine the entire travel industry and kind of figure out, like you said, about finding great places in our own backyard instead of having to fly all the way, because that totally happened to me as well. Like, there was so much to discover here in Germany itself. You don't really have to go outside. So yeah, I completely associate. But I was gonna say, tell us more about your digital guest books. How are you helping hotels reduce their carbon print? Because that's something else we noticed while we were doing research on you.
Yeah, we've been very, at the outset, very keen to try and bring in a sustainability angle to our business, and do it in a serious and honest way. probably one of the weaknesses I might have said if we'd had a bit more time to talk about it is a level of earnest that we sometimes have, where we want to do things too right and too properly, which can stymie you a bit. But I think it was important with sustainability to try and honor that, because there's a lot of Me Too kind of stuff going on, and greenwashing, and you get the point. And for us, it was important that we set out a sustainability path, so that we weren't just kind of saying on Earth Day, hey, we're going to plant some trees. And more to the point was to try and recognize that us as a company, Touchstay, can have our own sustainability position, but that should not be something that we try to push down to our customers through the use of our guidebook product, but rather give our customers the ability within their guidebooks to showcase their own version of what sustainability is. And that could be supporting the underprivileged kids charity in their local region, or it could be planting trees with ecology at a more macro level, which is what we do. And there are all of these things that I don't know why I was surprised, but all of these things that I suddenly discovered that all our customers are doing. They're already doing things within their community. There was an example of one here in the UK who completely renovated and refurbished their places over COVID, and all of the old furniture they recycled through to local charities, so that those people who needed that could take advantage of it. And that kind of thing, I think, is a part of what we were talking about just now, that guests and travelers are looking for a sustainable place to go and stay. And sustainability, like I said, does not have to mean CO2 emissions and planting trees. Sustainable can mean, are you being a part of generating a local sustainable economy by doing some of the things that I just mentioned? And it's therefore what I might call a triple bottom line effect, where you're environmentally aware, you're socially aware, but also it's a profitability issue for your business, because that's what the guest and that's what the traveler wants. And I think that's important when we think about sustainability. That's what we wanted to really focus on, was to not be one-dimensional about it, and that has the potential to be slightly complex. But if we can really distill that into the simple message, which is, our customers, what are you doing to be sustainable? And here's a part in the guidebook where you can talk about that to your guests.
So what are the things that you do in earnest that you think have kind of pushed you back? I'm interested in knowing.
I think it's because we have a tendency to overthink scenarios, because we want to do them so right. And so any particular thing that comes along, there's this kind of philosophy with a startup, isn't there, where you kind of just crack on with it and do it and see where the chips fall. There's also a very deliberate way of doing it, which I think is equally valid in a startup world. It doesn't mean that you kind of never do anything. But if you're going to do something and make that step forward, consider all the options and weigh them up. And then by all means, implement it simply in the kind of minimal viable product way. But that's and you can hear it in the way I'm talking. That's a little bit about what I mean about the earnest approach, is that we want to do things very deliberately. And that can sometimes hold us back if we're too long on it. But because we have that awareness, we tend to kind of say, guys, let's draw the line here and let's just go with the one that's on our gut after having considered everything.
I think recently Airbnb announced that they're going to try to house as many as 20,000 Afghan refugees. Did you hear about that? So I think a lot of these companies are taking stands in earnest. And so I can totally associate with the direction you guys are going in as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting that what they've done. But Airbnb have been good at that. They don't get me wrong. I don't believe in their entire model, and there are certain things that I think a lot of people would call out. But they are very aware of community. I mean, it's what drove their business. It's what got their business to where it was. And pre-pandemic, at the moment of pandemic, when they unilaterally took the decision to refund all of the guests, took the decision out of their hosts' hands about the policy of refunding or not, was both on the one hand brilliant from the guest point of view, well done Airbnb, but also awful from the host point of view. And so that's what I mean about the Airbnb have this difficult. But because they have a strong community, I think they've the Afghan example you gave, there's a brilliant one. But they've done that in many other scenarios, particularly during COVID and key workers and emergency workers. So yeah, hats off to that stance. And I it's difficult for all of us to do things like that, because this is part of the sustainability thing. Is you feel too small. Is it a government issue? Is it a regulation issue? That's kind of what people are going to default to. Like, I can't make a difference. But you can, in this very local community way. And Airbnb have the ability to do it on a much bigger scale, but very, very small operators have an ability to do it at a very micro level that has an impact on individuals in their society. And I think looked at that way, looked at it through that lens, you realize that there's an absolute way you can make a difference. It just doesn't have to be the thousands that Airbnb access, but one person, two person that you can influence is better than nothing at all.
So in addition to Airbnb, what other platforms do you work with, or what other platforms are most used by your users?
Our users tend to be quite democratic in the platforms they use, because historically not all business has come through a single channel. So they'll use Vrbo, which is an Expedia company. They will use Booking.com, TripAdvisor, some niche channels. So if they've got a particular niche, either in kind of demographic that they're targeting or particular experiences that they're offering, then there's tons of individual listing sites out there that speak to niches. But those big ones are the ones that I mentioned. And there's a growing proportion that do drive direct business to their own website, which I think is very interesting. Some of the larger players that have a big enough brand to be able to offer choice to travelers can market to consumers directly. And that doesn't mean kind of jumping on and competing with Airbnb on Google, but it certainly can be through repeat marketing, referral marketing, having strong, well-cultivated guest lists. And there are many successful examples in our business, some who are generating 80, 90% direct bookings and don't need the channels at all, which I think is very interesting.
And speaking of marketing, how do you market yourself to these people? Like, how do you make your business spread? Is it word of mouth? Is it through a host telling another host, or how does it happen?
We've been very lucky in that we are very, very strong on the word of mouth and referral. And that's mainly because our customers tend to belong to online forums, groups, in some cases very large ones, where we have the benefit of them talking about services like ours and mentioning our product. And as we've grown and as we've reached thousands of customers, you reach a point where when one person talks about you on a specific platform, there's lots of others that chime in and endorse that recommendation, and that has that kind of multiplier effect. So that's been very, very powerful for us. But we've also been really focused on our own content. So we've in the early days where we didn't have any money, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will relate to this as well, where you say, well, let's go after page one of Google for our search terms, and for a lot of businesses that can be quite hard to achieve if you're in a fairly saturated market, well, as you know. But we weren't in the early days. Our kind of product was one of a handful, and so we were able to easily hit page one and be top of page one for a lot of the search terms. Now, don't get me wrong, we weren't getting hundreds of thousands of people searching for that, but we were getting enough to sustain us in those early days. And we've maintained that strong presence, but we've gone away from that now. We've like I said, we've got the referral stuff, but we've also tried to be a little bit more creative in the kind of things we're doing, where we don't have a huge budget behind us. That creativity is really important, and the creativity is around the kind of content that we produce. So we started our own podcast a couple of months ago. We just completed season 1, quite rough and ready, because you didn't necessarily have the right equipment. You didn't really necessarily know how to organize things. And actually listening back to some of the podcasts you've done, it's wonderful to hear how you structure things and how there's a certain cadence in each one, which you take through to the next one. And it's that kind of consistency which we've learned. But the podcast is one to reach a slightly wider audience, and our podcast is all about guests. So we interview guests every time. So it's about the guest perspective, and typically we ask them to come with a story, good or bad, that then our listeners, who are hosts, can benefit from and learn from. So it's always with that guest mindset. So yeah, the podcast sustainability was, as we've said, a very important initiative for us, and that's helped us to, in the industry with some others, take a lead and try to get more in our community to adopt some sustainable practices, and of course that helps grow our business too. Case studies we've been very strong at, and I think that's a really, really important fundamental part of our business, and I'm sure lots of other businesses, is that ability to case study exactly why someone uses the product and exactly what benefits they've had, what value they've had from doing that. And that's one of the things that we always wanted to do, but could never do it so well because we didn't have the bandwidth, but also we didn't have enough customer traction to go out there and have this range of perspective, and now we do, so we've been doing that. So it's lots of micro moments, there isn't kind of this one sort of, aha, this has suddenly taken us from 0 to 100. And it's those micro moments that I think we've learned that the idea of micro moments is important to grasp and to latch onto, that there isn't this kind of one big that takes you from 0 to 100. It's these series of things you have to do and do them consistently well over time. And it's a little bit about going back to that thing I was talking about at the start, which is about being very deliberate about the way that you approach things, and not just kind of starting something and jumping into it and going, let's give this a whirl, this should be good, let's try it. Yes, by all means, but does it have like a place within your story? Do you see it becoming a longer term thing? And if yes, then yes, jump into it. And so that's what we've done, and that's been successful for us.
And do you have any strategy of how to handle the expected wanderlust that is going to come as soon as the border is open and whenever this goes away, and there's like a burst of tourism with a vengeance? Is there a strategy you have for that, or are you thinking about it, or what direction do you think it's going to go in?
Yeah, we're thinking about that every day. And it's very interesting for us because we have we probably have close on 1.5 million guests that will use our product this year, and that's a part of our business model which is untapped at present. We monetize through our customers, our hosts, and not just individual hosts but managers of a portfolio of properties. And the really interesting part is to look at the guest traffic that we have and the guest engagement we have, particularly to your point about when we all come back to traveling again, without limits and restrictions, which to be honest, I don't think will happen in the near future. This is going to be with us for a long time, this idea of having to test and potentially quarantine and new strains, etc. So I think that's a bit fanciful to think that it will open completely, but that therein lies the potential, I think, because people value that travel moment so much more than they did before. How can we leverage what we're doing to engage those guests in some other form of monetization for our product? But what we're always mindful of is that the guest is not our guest, the guest is our customer's guest. So we have to try and conceive of a product down the road where our customers have full control over their guest, but they have a number of other options, a suite of options, which will enable both them and us to benefit from the traffic, the guest engagement that we get in those guidebooks. So that's not really a very tangible answer to your question, but I think it gets across the kind of things that we're thinking about. And I mean, I'm kind of interested to hear your view, if we may, about what you kind of look for in travel and accommodation these days, and what you think you might want going forward.
I don't know. I just know that there is a wanderlust in me, even though I wasn't a very wanderlusty person before the pandemic. And I know for certain I would be interested in traveling a lot after all of this is done. But as you say, we don't even know when this is going to be done. So there's nothing concrete we can say. I was just wondering what your approach or strategy towards it was in general. But I think that was a good enough answer for a question that's vague. So
thank you.
So which way do you think is the best to generate feedback, particularly for the rental industry? Like, since this is something you're encountering a lot.
Feedback, you mean how?
Reviews or feedback, stuff like that for the rental industry in general. Like, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Most of us will be encouraged after we've traveled to leave the Airbnb review automatically. And I think that's fine. But I think there is a way for operators in our industry to try to gain feedback from travelers in their final stages of the stay. Whilst they're in good spirits, whilst they really understand whether they've had a good or a bad experience, and to leave the review at that moment. But I also think reviews can be simplified, because I think at the moment a lot of them will ask for quick star ratings and then leave your comments. But I think there could be more of a guided way that's much more specific to that business. So much more tailored questions about the kind of place that they were staying. And that's one of the interesting parts of our product, is that we could facilitate that, on checkout, pinging the guest a message to leave a review, and have that review be really tailored to the specific place they're staying in, as opposed to being, kind of quite generic star ratings and an open blank field to leave your comments. And I think that the reviews are important, but they're just one aspect. I think one of the things that's really interesting about this industry is that because it is so quirky and it is so fragmented, that consistency of experience is non-standard. There's no star rating or anything like that for homes. And if those reviews can capture the real essence of what it was to stay at that place, and then somehow get a qualitative feedback, qualitative measure on that place, I think that's really interesting. We all look at reviews and we all read reviews. Of course we do. We look at the photos and we look at the price and the location, and then we might jump and see what social proof exists. And I think the more tailored that social proof can be, the better. So I think it's interesting. There's plenty of opportunity there.
So the last question for you is, what would you be doing if not this?
What would I be doing if not this? I would probably still be in fashion.
Okay.
Probably not loving it immensely. Probably not getting the same amount of satisfaction that I get out of this. But I will say, probably living a very comfortable life on a nice fat salary, which are the things that you give up. And trust me, there are moments, I wouldn't say quite daily, but certainly frequently, where you do reflect and you go, what could, the sliding door, what could my life have been? But I can hand on heart say that I might have been sitting on a much larger bank balance, but I would certainly not be enjoying my life as much. And how much does one need in life? I think that's one of the important things that I always try to reflect on is what is happiness in your life. And without getting too philosophical about it, I think that's really important to try and tap into. I mean, if money drives you, great. But money is important for most people, of course it is. But for a lot of people, you reach a point where another extra $1,000, pounds in your bank account is not going to change your life materially at all. And so run after the things that fuel you, that fire you, that get you out of bed every day. And that ends up, without being cliched about it, a much happier life. And so, I would probably be in fashion or some corporate life, living my life and having a nice fat balance. But I don't know how happy I'd be.
Because I guess the pandemic also put a stop to that kind of thinking. So now we're kind of I don't know, in my case, of evaluating what makes us happy, because you figured out you can only just do domestic tourism and be equally happy as international tourism. So there's already like, you really don't have so much to spend on, and that makes you reevaluate things. But in your case, you would have been sitting on a fat salary and attending the premiere of The House of Gucci with Lady Gaga and others. I don't know. Maybe that's where you would have been. But
yeah, I know. Well, I used to go to some of the fashion shows as well. Not Gucci actually, but Alexander McQueen and Victoria Beckham, where I was at. And it's funny how people go, wow, you went to the shows, you went to the fashion shows. I'd be like, yeah, but do you realize that the shows are like 10 minutes long? And you're normally standing there waiting for it to start because the designer is hours late. And it's over like in a flash. And so
it's like
I guess,
Derby.
Totally, yeah. But I mean, I guess that kind of takes away from the kind of the lead up to it and the experience and the party you have afterwards and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. It is a bit more than that, but certainly people are like, oh, the show. It's like, well, it's not just the kind of show that's a part of it.
Well, that's great, because I mostly can't sit through like long stuff anyway. So 10 minutes show is perfect, and you get to network the rest of the time.
Brilliant.
That sounds ideal. But okay, well, that was the end of the interview. Thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Andrew McNulty, who is the co-founder of TouchStay, a software service that enables hosts and managers in the short-term rental industry to create digital guidebooks for their guests. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been a blast.
Check out their website for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.